Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto was bitten by a vampire and got a harem with female Haku, Anko, and Temari? If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's start. Chapter 1. The King Comes Forth. It was a perfectly normal October 10th in the village hidden in the leaves. Well, as perfectly normal as a ninja village can be. It was a beautiful summer night, perfect for the festival to celebrate the downfall of the greatest demon lord, the Kyuubi, the nine-tailed fox. However, things were not perfect for 5-year-old Naruto Uzumaki, who was currently running for his life from a mob of villagers. Why do they all hate me? He thought. I haven't done anything to them and they treat me like some animal that wants to kill them. Turning into an alleyway, Naruto's way was cut off. Seeing a bunch of trash cans, he decided to try to hide. However, there is only so long you can hide in a closed-off back alley. So, the demon thinks it can escape us by hiding behind garbage, does it? Came a voice. Suddenly, Naruto was grabbed and pulled into the worst beating he had, and will have, ever received. Hopping across rooftops, a lone figure was moving freely over the village. Hopping not exactly the best word, he seemed to be almost gliding. Damn, never a meal in a ninja village, thought the shadowy figure, but something caught his eye. Down in the alleyway, he saw a small boy, no older than 5, lying broken and bloody, but strangely not dead, in the alley below. My lucky night, said the man, appearing next to Naruto, from the look of this, you won't be missed. Grinning, and showing off his severely long fangs in the process, the man bit down into Naruto's neck and started draining his blood. Deep in the recesses of Naruto's mind, a pair of giant red eyes opened and a dark voice mumbled, "Oh no you don't, you damn parasite." With that, a massive amount of red chakra flared to life and began flowing into Naruto. Back outside, our now revealed vampire was feeling two things he had rarely felt since becoming a creature of the night. Fear, though he couldn't for the life or undeath as the case may be figure out where it was coming, other was pure agonizing pain. Releasing Naruto, he screamed in horror before turning to ash. Good riddance to bad rubbish. This may well work to my advantage though. Best get to work changing the kit's new jeans. An hour later, Naruto came across a big room. By the looks of things, he had earlier decided the mob must have thrown him into a sewer, and he had been wandering around ever since. In this new room, was a giant cage, kept shut only by a small bit of paper with the kanji for seal on it. Who knew that the sewers were this big? He said more than asked. Suddenly, from within the cage, someone, or something, said, "This isn't a sewer." Looking up, Naruto looked into a pair of giant eyes and teeth that made him look small in comparison to just one. Who are you? Naruto managed to ask. I am the great Kyuubi no Kitsune. And before you start any crap about the 4th Hokage killing me, let me tell you that I cannot be killed by conventional means. The only way I can be stopped is with a very powerful seal, which is why I am here. The 4th sealed me in an insignificant child, you. So that's why everyone hates me, they think I'm you. Some kind of monster, a freak, a demon. Yes, but soon, you will become something beyond even what their minds can comprehend. What exactly do you mean? You have been bitten by a vampire. What the hell is a vampire? Shut up and I'll tell you. The vampire tale starts long before the Sage of Six Paths, and long before the nine-tailed beasts. I don't know the exact details, but I'll try my best. Now, I won't bother with an explanation of how the vampires came to be. It was before my time, and the stories differ greatly. Some say the original vampire was a man named Count Dracula. The man became so powerful that only a werewolf could manage to kill him. A werewolf. Quite when I'm speaking well. Anyway, the story goes that he was murdered. But he made a pact with the devil himself and returned as a vampire. Other tales speak of a man named Alexander Corvinus. He was infected by a virus that made him immortal. He passed on his immortality to 2 of his 3 sons, one bitten by a bat, the other by a wolf, creating the first true vampire and lichen clans. Because I know you're going to ask, lichen is another term for werewolf. Regardless of how they were created, the original vampires were gods compared to the vampires of today. Vampires now can be killed with silver, stakes through the heart, even sunlight can be fatal. You however will not be so easily killed. In fact, I've removed most of the weaknesses. I've turned you into a mini Dracula. The only thing that can kill you would be a werewolf, but that species went extinct long ago. Your powers will be impressive, even by shinobi standards. The ability to walk up solid walls without chakra. You will possess the ability to hypnotize weaker minds for a short period of time through eye contact. A nice little ability is that you won't appear in mirrors, but you can travel through them, though you need to know the location you are going. You will also be unable to be killed by mortal means, as your body is technically dead already. You can also transform into a large demonic half-man, half-bat creature. This will increase your powers exponentially, and also give you the ability to fly. Some stories claim that Dracula couldn't have children, or that he could, but they would be born dead. I have remedied this. If you ever decide to have children, they will be born mortal, and they should become vampires naturally as they grow older. I think all this is well worth the cost. Finished Kyuubi. What cost? You're going to be immortal. Once you reach the age of 21, it will appear as though you stay 21 forever, the same going for anyone you turn. You have incredible abilities along with it. However, to sustain this life, you must drink the blood of others. What? Relax. You don't need a lot of blood, maybe a person worth every month, though you can have as much as you want. You can also sustain yourself on animal blood. So can I still eat regular food? Yes. Now, you are about to wake up. I suggest you tell the old man all that I've told you, and if you need to talk to me, you need only think what you want to say. Hidden Leaf Hospital. I don't understand it, Lord Hokage. He is still breathing, he still has brain activity, he is even mumbling in his sleep. But there is no heartbeat, no pulse. In truth, his body is so dead it could be buried 6 feet under by now. Thank you, you may go. Naruto groaned. He knew both of those voices. Old man Sarutobi and his personal doctor. Opening his eyes, Naruto looked up at the ceiling of his least favorite place, yet one he knew so well, the hospital. Naruto, are you feeling alright? Asked Sarutobi. He looked at Naruto and hardly recognized him. His hair had become a slightly dull, but only if you had an eye to notice such a change. He seemed muscular for a 5-year-old, though he was still lean. His ears had become ever so slightly pointed and his skin had become slightly paler. All in all, he did not look the same. I'm fine, old man, and boy do I have news for you. After recounting everything to Sarutobi, it was decided that Naruto's abilities be listed as a bloodline and he be told of his heritage. After flipping out, Naruto accepted the inheritance left to him by his father, the 4th Hokage. It was also decided that Naruto be trained outside the academy. While Sarutobi wanted Naruto to make friends, he didn't want Naruto to lose control or something and feed on a student. Naruto did however get a nice job for when he wasn't training in the academy jutsu, which wasn't so hard as his chakra control seemed, while not great, slightly better than it was. Naruto, though young, got to execute prisoners through draining. Though the thought of killing and drinking blood still disturbed Naruto, he wasn't about to say no to what he was now very good at. Time skip. 7 years later. Naruto had all but mastered the 3 academy jutsu, along with a more powerful clone jutsu the old man had taught him, the shadow clone jutsu. He had also very nearly mastered all of his vampire abilities. He looked exactly as he did that night 7 years ago, he had just gotten bigger. He wore a black trench coat similar to Ibiki Morino's, black shinobi pants, and a black shirt with the kanji for blood on the front. Today was the day of the genin team assignments and since they were 1 genin short, Sarutobi was putting Naruto in the slot, though he didn't know who his teammates would be. Naruto was sitting sleeping in the back of the class, while the teacher, Iruka, read off the team list. Okay, Team 7 will be Sakura Haruno, Sasuke Uchiha, and Naruto Uzumaki. Said Iruka, though double-taking at the last name. Right in the middle of her gloating, the pink banshee, I mean Sakura, just asked, Sensei, who is Naruto? That would be me, said Naruto, appearing at the front of the class. Who is this guy? Oh well, as long as he doesn't get in my way. Guess who thought that? 2 hours. I swear if our sensei is this late constantly, I'll make death look like a luxury compared to what I'll do to him. Damn it, old man, why in the 9 hells did you have to make Kakashi our sensei? Naruto screamed. You know this guy? Asked Sasuke. Yeah, he's practically famous for 2 things in the village. His little smut book, and his chronic tardiness. was Naruto's reply. Suddenly, Naruto calmed down ever so slightly while muttering, finally showed up, very quietly to himself. Both Sasuke and Sakura looked at him like he was nuts, when the door opened to reveal an odd-looking man with a face mask and a headband covering his left eye. Staring as impolite, he said, "My first impression of you is, you're all idiots." This earned sweat drops from the 3 genin present. "Meet me on the roof," said Kakashi, who disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Looking around, Sasuke and Sakura realized that Naruto was gone too. Kakashi got to the roof to see that Naruto was already there. "So, Naruto, bit any good necks lately?" asked Kakashi with his little eye smile he does so well. "Not recently, but if you tell these two about my bloodline, before I'm ready to tell, it's gonna be you who I feed on next. And if the screams of terror and pain I normally get from prisoners are any indication, it's not very pleasant." Kakashi nodded while making a mental note to keep his distance from Naruto. Finally the other 2 genin showed up. The introductions go the usual way until Naruto's. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like the old man Hokage, training, my side job, and ramen. I dislike arrogant pricks, and my dream, well, I haven't really thought about this one. After all, I've got all the time in the world. Okay, meet me at 7 o'clock tomorrow at Training Ground 7 for your genin test," said Kakashi. "What? But we're already genin," shrieked Sakura, bursting several eardrums in the process. "See," she said while pointing to her headband. After getting his hearing back, Kakashi said, "That was the test to see if you were worthy to become genin. Don't be late, oh, and don't eat breakfast or you'll throw up." Chapter 2. The First True Mission. Naruto arrived at the training ground at 5 minutes to 9 to a screaming pink-haired bitch, sorry, Sakura screaming at him that he was late, and that, Kakashi-sensei told them to be here by 7. Now, Naruto may not be a conventional vampire, but the sunlight still irritated him. It weakened his powers and made him feel very irate. He may not have the weaknesses of the false vampires, but he was still more of a creature of the night, damn it. Finally, having had enough of her ranting, he took her by the throat and looked her in the eyes. His powers may be weakened in direct sunlight, but he could still hypnotize her weaker mind. She fell asleep and went limp on the ground, much to the relief of Naruto and Sasuke, who was sitting on a lone tree branch. Jumping down, he asked, "How did you manage to shut her up?" "Part of my bloodline," replied Naruto, "it's one of my special abilities granted by it. If you're good, I might show you the others." Now Sasuke was intrigued. "You have a bloodline. Congratulations, you just went from a loser to a noble loser in my book," he said. "Thanks, I guess," replied Naruto, though in his head he was thinking, "Must not kill my team, must not kill my team, must not kill my team." It was around this time that Kakashi showed up with some interesting news. Waking Sakura up, he informed them all that as there was 2 bloodlines on the team, the council had seen fit to pass the team without a test. Kakashi would just be sparring with them to see their abilities and learn where they need improvement. In the end, Naruto was definitely the strongest on the team, and Sakura was definitely the weakest. Hearing the results, the thoughts of the 3 genin went something like this. Even with a bloodline, how can this loser be stronger than me? Once I unlock the Sharingan, I will beat him and resume my title as top genin, and then I'll copy enough jutsu to beat him. Thought Sasuke. Sasuke is still the stronger of the 2. I bet this Naruto guy cheated somehow. Were Sakura's thoughts. That went as expected, and I didn't even have to reveal anything about my bloodline to Sakura and Sasuke. Thought Naruto. Oh, Naruto, by the way, Lord Hokage said that he has a new job for you at the prison, said Kakashi. At this, everyone saw Naruto's smirk turn into an almost evil smile, and though Kakashi saw it, the 2 idiot genin dismissed Naruto's eyes turning yellow and fangs elongating as a trick of the light. What is Naruto's job at the prison anyway? Asked Sakura. Looking up from his book, Kakashi said, oh, he's one of the executioners, causing the 2 genin to gape at the retreating form of their teammate. Time skip. That's it, old man. If you don't give us a higher ranked mission, I'm gonna kill everyone in this room. And I'm gonna start with that fucking cat. Shouted Naruto as they had just returned with Tora the cat for the 14th time that week. Naruto was very good at hiding his abilities, much to his teammates' dismay, but if he had to chase that damned cat once more, he was going to go ballistic on anyone he saw. Sweating slightly, Sarutobi said, "Well, I don't see any problem with giving you a C-ranked mission. Bring in the client." The doors opened and in walked a man that, though probably less to most people, to Naruto's more sensitive nose made Naruto's eyes water with the smell of cheap sake. In an incredibly slurred tone, the man said, "These brats are supposed to protect me. The one with the mask looks competent. Hell, I'd even say the one in the trench coat looks okay, but the broody one and Pinky look like they'd run away at the first sign of danger." Naruto could tell something was off, but unfortunately, he was too busy trying to keep Sasuke from killing the new client, and Kakashi looked to be having the same trouble with Sakura. "I assure you, we are all capable ninja. If anything goes wrong, I'm a Jonin, so you have nothing to fear," said Kakashi while straining to hold back Sakura. "Well, I'm Tazuna, the super awesome bridge builder. I expect that nothing happens to me," replied the self-proclaimed super awesome bridge builder. "We'll meet at the gate in 1 hour, dismissed," said Kakashi before disappearing in a poof of smoke. Naruto, after going to his place to pick up his stuff, headed to the weapon shop. Walking in, he called to the shopkeeper and asked if his special order was ready. "Oh yeah, got it right here. And let me tell you, it's not often I get an order like this." "Hell, I've never had an order quite like this one," said the shopkeeper. After paying the man, Naruto sealed the item in a special storage seal on his arm. It was a special seal designed by his father. You could seal nearly anything into it, as it was by far one of the most advanced storage seals ever designed. Hell, if he wanted to, he could seal up his whole house and carry it with him if he wanted. After arriving at the gate to meet his team, with a surprisingly on-time Kakashi and Tazuna, the team set out to Wave Country. After about 15 minutes of walking, Naruto noticed a puddle up ahead. It struck him as odd, seeing that it hadn't rained in weeks. It was then that he sensed them. 2 ninja were hiding in the puddle under genjutsu. He was instantly on his guard, as was Kakashi. As they walked by, the ninja rose from the puddle and used their connecting chain to rip Kakashi to shreds. What they didn't count on was Naruto's ability to hypnotize. In the time it took the other 2 genin to react, Naruto had already incapacitated the 2 assailants. Simple chunin at best, and they were after Tazuna, I believe. "I knew something was up," thought Naruto as Kakashi appeared and explained his substitution. He then proceeded to interrogate Tazuna, who gave them a sob story about his poor family and village being sucked dry by some guy named Gato. The team decided to continue the mission, so all that was left was to figure out what to do with the demon brothers. "May I have them, Kakashi-sensei? I haven't had any in a while, and these 2 might want to know a little more of my abilities," said Naruto. "Sure, Naruto. Tazuna, you may want to turn around and plug your ears," said Kakashi, putting his nose in his little orange book. Sasuke and Sakura watched with horror as Naruto's eyes began to glow an eerie yellow, his fangs elongated, and his mouth opened to an incredible width. They couldn't stop themselves from watching as he drained the 2 dry, couldn't drown out the screams of terror from the demon brothers. When it was all over, both genin threw up at what they had witnessed. Turning around, Naruto walked up to the rest of his team while wiping some extra blood from his mouth. Stepping up to his 2 sick teammates, he said, "And that is why I have never shown you any of my abilities." Gaining the guts to say something, Sakura managed to get out a very shaky, "Naruto, you're sick." "Just what the hell was that?" asked Sasuke, putting in his 2 cents. "That would be the cost of my bloodline," replied Naruto. It was at this point that Kakashi decided to step in. You see, Naruto's bloodline is very unique. It grants him a number of special abilities, however, in order to sustain his life, he has to drink the blood of others, hence his other job at the prison. These 2 look like Bane got a hold of them. Everyone turned around to see Tazuna examining the bodies. Bane is a ruthless thug who works for Gato. He usually hangs around the town at night, as nobody's ever seen him around during the day. Anyone who faces him ends up dead, without a drop of blood left in their veins, he explained. "Hey Fox, are you thinking what I'm thinking? Definitely a vampire, but let's see if he can withstand a true vampire." "The guy's a vampire," said Naruto. Everyone looked at him now. For the 300th time in a while, Naruto was getting very irritated. What's a vampire?" asked Sakura. Naruto sighed and put his head in his hand. I'll explain on the way, he said. The group started walking again. As they went on their way, Naruto began his lengthy explanation, though he shortened it the best he could. All right, let's just get this out of the way and say that I'm a vampire. Now, vampirism isn't a bloodline exactly. In order to become one, you must first be bitten by someone who is already a vampire. There are two different outcomes though. Now, if you are bitten and survive, you will begin to turn into a vampire yourself. However, though it's not entirely known anymore, you must then drink the blood of the one who bit you. This is what stabilizes the whole process. If you don't drink their blood, you get what I call a false vampire. To compare, I as a true vampire am to a false vampire as a jonin is to a genin. However, this is because false vampires have several weaknesses that I do not, and does not take into account any skill they already have, if they're a ninja for example. Now, the thing you have to learn about all vampires is that there are certain things that make us beatable. I tell you this for two reasons. One is that I don't have the weaknesses of false vampires. And two is that if we are going to work together, the old man thinks you should at least know a little about me. The thing is, and I know you're going to say something, Sakura, but don't, is that vampires are in essence the living dead, which makes any one of us a bitch to kill. What do you mean the living dead? Asked Sakura. She doesn't listen very well, does she? Feel for my pulse, said Naruto, pointing at his neck. Walking up closer to him, Sakura felt his neck for a pulse, but pulled back her hand as shock after a few seconds of not feeling one. There isn't any pulse, she said, and you're ice cold. Sasuke and Tazuna looked at Naruto in shock before Tazuna went back to walking, though he looked a bit shaken, and Sasuke went back to being Sasuke, though in his head he was thinking, if Naruto can transfer his abilities to me, I could finally beat Itachi. But before he could say anything, Naruto cut him off. And I will not turn any one of you, he said, and I'll tell you why. These powers may be a gift, but they're also a curse. I can't die. I will never die. And to make sure of this I have to kill others to stay alive. I will not bring this upon anyone who is unwilling. What about someone who is willing? Asked Sasuke. He was hoping this was his chance for power. Poor Emo. Don't even start with me, Sasuke, you don't know what willing is. Have you thought it through? If you would ever manage to kill your brother, which I doubt you ever will. What are you going to do after that? To live forever alone, and possibly a fate worse than that, to live forever without a purpose. How do you even know about my brother? Asked Sasuke with a look that could have caused Satan to turn tail and run. He was one of my guards as a child. And he was always very kind to me when he was around, answered Naruto. Now, as I was saying, vampires are weak against mainly silver and sunlight. Time skip. They had reached Tazuna's house after a bout with some guy named Zabuza. Kakashi and Naruto managed to hold him off until some fake hunter nin arrived to get him out of danger. However, they all knew he planned to show up again, so Kakashi was having Sakura and Sasuke tree climbing during the day. At night, however, was Naruto's time for some real action. Entering some bar on the other side of the small town, Naruto walked up to the bartender and said something that made not even the hard alcoholics want to drink anymore. I'm looking for Bane. At this, everyone in the bar stopped what they were doing. I don't know what you want, but you must have a major death wish. He's in the back room. And for the record, when I haul your corpse out of there, do you prefer a burial or shall I just burn the body? Asked the bartender. Walking into the back, Naruto saw a tall man with dark skin and no hair. He was wearing all black. But his most outstanding feature was his elongated fangs. Standing around him were some other thugs that Naruto could tell were vampires. You Bane? He asked. Everyone once again stopped what they were doing and looked at him. When they saw him they started laughing. Yeah, I'm Bane, said the dark-skinned man. Turning to his followers he said, look at this, boys, the bartender sent us some dinner, much to the amusement of the other vampires. What are you here for, kid? He asked. I'm here to kill you, was Naruto's reply, once again earning laughs from the others in the room. Man, kid, you sure got guts, said Bane. I'll make sure to have them carve something nice on your tombstone. Well, said Naruto, I had something else in mind, while slowly whipping blood on the seal on his arm, which he held behind his back. Suddenly, Naruto disappeared and reappeared behind one of Bane's thugs, holding a very ornate sword. Before anyone could ask what he had done, the vampire suddenly burned up and turned to ash, and the bones turned to dust. The process continued until all of the thugs were gone. It was only then that Naruto noticed Bane was gone, but there was a note. "I'll give you this, kid, you've got spirit, but I doubt that even someone like you can take out me. You may be different than other vampires, but eventually, I'm gonna come out on top. I think I'll leave town, so you don't have to bother looking for me, but know this, we will meet again. That's a promise." "And so it begins," muttered Naruto before heading back to Tezuna's house. Chapter end. So, what did you think? Once again short, I know, but I had to get this out. Bane is my personal character I created and will play a role sometimes in chapters. By the way, I made a mistake in the last chapter. By my count, Naruto is 12 if you take notice of the story. I will change this so that he and the other genin are at least 15, so for now just pretend that's how old they are. Other story news. I plan to update Ninja in the galaxy far far away soon. That's it on this one. Chapter 3. A few new players enter the game. Naruto stood out in the forest cleaning his sword. But this was by no standards an ordinary sword. Naruto custom ordered this sword to be made of pure silver. Not much good in an actual fight, but positively deadly against vampires. He had been training in swordsmanship for 3 years and now he was ready to put it into practice. Slicing his hand and wincing slightly at the burn of the silver, Naruto drew some blood and made the hand seals for the summoning jutsu. Suddenly, with a poof and a bit of smoke, a bat as tall as an average human stood before him. Naruto remembered how he got this contract. It had belonged to a prisoner, but was confiscated and the prisoner was killed. Not a bad taste either, thought Naruto. After finding out what animal the contract was for, Naruto struck up a deal with old man Sarutobi and the contract was given to him and listed as a clan summoning contract. Giving the bat a scroll, he said, "Bring this to my informant, and tell him it's urgent." With a bow, the bat took the scroll and said in a feminine voice, "As you wish, my lord." It then proceeded to take off into the night sky. Resealing his sword, Naruto decided to sleep outside, and slowly relaxed under the moonlight as he drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Naruto sensed a presence coming up to him. Taking in her scent, which he had to admit intrigued him slightly, Naruto realized that whoever this girl was, she was the fake hunter Nin that was helping Zabuza. Deciding to play with her for a while, Naruto decided to speak. "So," he said, "how is that old eyebrow-less freak Zabuza?" With that, she was on him with several Senbon needles pointed at his neck. She really needed a lesson why you should never get too close to a vampire, especially if you didn't have the right weapons. Gathering a small amount of strength, though much less than he could if it wasn't for the damn sunlight, he hurled her off of him and slammed her into a tree. Watching her get up, Naruto knew what was coming but didn't move as she threw her Senbon with deadly accuracy and they sank into his neck. She watched as he fell to the ground in a heap and went to inspect the body. Leaning down to check for his pulse, but feeling none, she began to stand up, but jumped when his eyes shot open and he yelled, "Boo!" Chuckling, Naruto got back up and unceremoniously ripped the Senbon from his neck, which healed instantly, and threw them onto the ground. "Was that supposed to do anything?" he asked. "How are you still alive?" asked the girl. Naruto chuckled and walked up to her. "Who says I am, because they're a dirty liar. Fact of the matter, my dear, is that I'm already dead, so you may as well just sit down because you won't be able to take me down and I have a deal for you," said Naruto. "If you're dead, how are we even having a conversation?" asked the girl. "I'm sure if you were working for Gato that you know a man by the name of Bane," replied Naruto. "So you're like that creep, just perfect." This girl was seriously getting on Naruto's nerves. Calming himself, Naruto looked into her eyes and said, "Yes and no, now sit." The girl was about to protest but found her legs moving on their own. "Huh," said Naruto, while sitting down across from her, "I didn't think that would actually work. Now, tell me your name." Sighing, she said, "My name is Haku, but isn't it polite to give your own name first before asking another's?" "How rude of me," said Naruto, "my name is Naruto." Naruto Uzumaki. "Well Naruto, you said you wanted to make some kind of a deal with me," said Haku. "In time my dear," replied Naruto, "but first, it might be to both our advantage to tell each other a bit about ourselves. Because if you say something I don't like, I can kill you before you even realize what you said to piss me off. Time skip. Later that night, Naruto was sitting out in the woods when he heard a rustling. So you came, said Naruto. Behind him, a figure appeared from the shadows behind him. Just as you requested, my lord, said the man from the shadows. How many times do I have to tell you, you are my best and most trusted friend? Why do you insist on calling me lord? Asked Naruto in an annoyed tone, while walking up to the man. 1. Because it irritates you so much, and 2. Because I am eternally grateful for what you have done for me. You even told me yourself that I am the only one you have ever turned. Speaking of turning others, when are we going to find you a girlfriend? I'm getting there. Now do you have what I asked for? Asked Naruto. The man nodded and took out a scroll. It seems that your friend Bane was once a Jonin from the village hidden in the mist. I found some records from his time. He is, confirmed, dead. Not very thorough in their search, were they? Anyway, from the date of his death, he seems to have become a vampire before you were even born, so he has you in experience. He is ruthless, and smart, though nowhere near Nara intelligence. It seems he has made himself king of all of the false vampires, as he is by far the most powerful of them. Satisfied for now with the knowledge, Naruto nodded and asked, did you bring those ingredients I asked for? The man took out some plants and a few strange liquids and said, yeah, mind if I ask what they're for? Naruto replied, the fox has been talking to me. With these ingredients mixed just right, and fusing them fully using his demonic chakra, we can use this little mixture and inject some poor soul with it to recreate the lichens. Note: I will refer to werewolves as lichens for the rest of the story. Why would you do that? I thought that you could be killed by lichens, and for that matter, so can I. What if you can't control this person? Asked the man from the shadows. That's what this is for, said Naruto, pulling out a scroll. Taking it, the other vampire noted that there was a very complex seal array inside. This is a control seal. From what the fox has told me, with chakra, a lichen could change at will and control themselves, but only at night, and only on nights without a full moon. When there is a full moon, they'll pretty much go ballistic. This seal is one of my own creation, using ideas from the caged bird seal of the Hyuga clan. Once a lichen transforms, the surge in chakra from the transformation will activate the seal. They still have free will, but the seal itself will make them unable to disobey a direct order from a true vampire. The vampire shook his head and sighed, okay, but if this goes south, I'm going to laugh at your corpse and shout, I told you so. With that, he began to transform into a giant half-man half-bat creature. Once the transformation was complete, he let out a horrible shriek and took off into the night. The next morning, Naruto awoke to find that the rest of the group had left for the bridge. There was a note left for him confirming the fact. Getting ready to go over to the bridge, Naruto just finished putting on his clothes and making himself look perfect, not that he could tell, as he didn't show up in the mirror. It was around this time that he heard a scream from downstairs, and by the sound of it, it was coming from Tezuna's daughter. Looking out the mirror, he saw two thugs with swords dragging her out of the house, and he watched as her annoying son ran out after them. Sighing, Naruto decided he may as well save them, though it wasn't part of the mission, and he didn't particularly like the boy, as he had made a comment a few nights before about Naruto and the rest of the ninja having an easy life. Needless to say, it took every ounce of his willpower not to kill the boy then and there. You freaks, let my mom go, yelled Inari as he rushed at the two thugs dragging away Tsunami, Tezuna's daughter. Hey look, the kid wants to play, said the first one. How about this game? The closer you get, the sooner you die, said the other. They started laughing as Inari got closer. Finally, the first one looked at Inari and said, whoops, you lose. And brought his sword down on the now in range boy. But before it could chop him in half, it was stopped by something. By the looks of it, a shoulder blade. Looking closely, he took in the appearance of the teen that had interrupted his kill. He had blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and 3 whisker marks on each cheek. He was sporting a black trench coat, black pants, ninja sandals, and a red t-shirt with sporting the kanji for blood. Pulling the sword out, he saw the newcomer heal instantaneously. Before he could contemplate further on this, the boy grabbed his arm and used his own sword to impale him through the head. His partner, though frightened, ran up to the blonde and started to swing wildly, eventually managing to slice his arm clean off. However, if he was looking for a win, he was mistaken, as the blonde picked up his severed arm and reattached it, the tendons and nerves reconnecting until he saw the skin pull over and heal seamlessly without leaving any sign he had been injured. Grabbing the man by the throat, Naruto looked over to Inari and said, "Turn around and whatever you do don't look." Scared stiff, the boy complied. "Please, have mercy," begged the thug still in Naruto's clutches. "Sorry," said Naruto, all out of mercy. Naruto had planned to just drain the poor bastard, but he had another idea when a cloud suddenly covered the sun, and he felt a rush of his strength. Pulling back his unoccupied fist, he rammed it forward and literally put his fist into the thug's stomach. "Cool," said Naruto, "I can feel your spine." As he said this, the still-alive thug felt a surge of pain and began coughing up his own blood, which to his horror, Naruto wiped some off with 2 fingers and slowly began to lick the blood off. "What the hell are you?" the thug managed to gurgle out. Naruto looked him straight in the eye and said the last 2 words he would ever hear. "I'm complicated." With that, Naruto gripped his spine tight and pulled, ripping the man's spinal column to shreds, and the man went limp. Those last 3 lines of Naruto's were some of my favorite movie lines of all time, I had to put them in. As the man fell to the ground dead, Naruto turned to Tsunami and said 3 words. "Burn the bodies." With that, she saw Naruto begin to transform into a horrible man-bat creature and take off in the direction of the bridge. Tizuna's bridge. While Kakashi seemed to be gaining the upper hand against Zabuza, Sasuke was not having as much luck with the fake Hunter Nin. "Damn it, this guy is moving too fast for me to see. If I don't find a way to beat this mirror jutsu, it's more than likely gonna stay that way," he thought. Suddenly though, his thoughts were cut short by a horrible shriek, causing him and everyone else to try and peer through the mist for the source. "It appears our fight is over for now, Uchiha, as Lord Zabuza and I have some business to attend to," said the fake hunter before all the images disappeared, followed shortly by the mirrors themselves. And as though some signal had been given, the mist finally cleared, letting Sasuke see Zabuza and the hunter standing next to a giant creature. Then, before his eyes, the creature transformed into Naruto and he seemed to be talking with Zabuza. With Naruto, Haku, and Zabuza. "So, do we have a deal?" "I assume we do or you wouldn't have stopped the fight," said Naruto. "What deal? You just said something about us gaining near immeasurable power. You haven't told us what you want," replied the demon of the bloody mist. "Always right to the point, aren't we? What I want is simple, I offer you protection and power. You join the Leaf Village and Haku agrees to join my clan as one of my wives." At this, the eyes of everyone within hearing distance widened. "Nothin' doin'," said Zabuza, "we'd be willing to join Konoha, but Haku isn't going to be used as some toy. As much as I hate to admit it, she's like a daughter to me." "Yes, but you see, unless she joins my clan, the 2 of you cannot actually enter the village safely. I may be loyal to the Hokage, but as it is, the council has more power now. They would more than likely turn you in for the bounty, and Haku would be given to someone like the Uchiha on my team, who will use her as only breeding stock. As you are now, if you ran, you would probably get captured by another nation's Hunter Nin, and I also know you are tired of running. I can see it in your eyes. Deep inside those eyes you have the look of a man who simply doesn't give a damn anymore," finished Naruto. Zabuza was about to retort, but was stopped by Haku putting a hand on his shoulder. "I'll do it," she said, "but not for the reasons you think. Naruto, you have shared the curse that is your life with me, and it is similar to mine in many ways. You also have a look in your eyes, one that screams for companionship, though I doubt you would ever admit to that. However, what I believe most of all, is that while your heart may no longer be beating, it doesn't mean you don't have one." Naruto looked touched for a moment before realizing what he was doing. He quickly schooled his features and in a matter-of-fact tone said something that seemed to make a chill run up everyone's spine. "It's going to be a pleasure proving you wrong, my dear." Suddenly, clapping was heard from across the bridge. Chapter 4. Hello all you peoples in fanfiction land. Fan of fanfics back with, in my opinion, an awesome chapter with an idea that I don't even believe has been done before, though I may be wrong. If I am, please tell me. I hate to take credit for the work of others. Now, without further ado, on with the story. Disclaimer. I do not own Naruto or anything I may cross over into during the course of the story. Tazuna and all the shinobi present looked to the other end of the bridge to see Gato, thug army behind him, clapping at all the events. Well Zabuza, he said, it sounds like you plan to betray me. Not like it makes much difference, I wasn't planning on paying you anyway, he finished with a smirk and a chuckle. He then turned his attention to Naruto. And you scared away my best enforcer. But he left a few tidbits of information, vampire, he said, causing Naruto to scowl. Allow me to finish him, my dear, said Naruto, turning to Haku, and consider it a wedding present. Gato once again smirked. You don't think I held Bane off with just money, do you? This is business, we always have a backup plan, he said, pointing at one of his lackeys. Said lackey pulled out a crossbow and fired a single bolt at Naruto, who caught it. However, he soon screamed in pain, as his hand started on fire. Quickly throwing the now recognized silver to the ground, it too was in flames, and melted on the unfinished bridge as if it were in a forge. Holding his hand, which was healing at a great deal slower rate, Naruto sent a glare and snarled at the now laughing crime lord. Feeling greatly annoyed, Naruto began transforming into his creature form, and, letting out a blood-curdling shriek, began running at the group. Gato and his thugs, unaware that Naruto could transform into such a beast, were in a panic. Jumping and using his wings to glide slightly, Naruto landed in the middle of the group. Picking up one of the thugs, he let out a roar and tore one of his arms off. Grabbing the thug by his other arm, he hurled him off the bridge. Catching on, Kakashi created several shadow clones and took on several members of the group. Haku, using her bloodline, formed an ice mirror and walked into it, before several other mirrors formed around the battlefield, though at that point it was more like a slaughterhouse. Coming out of random mirrors, she would grab the closest thug and slit their throat. Gato, seeing his army being taken down as if it were made of paper, began to run, hoping to avoid the attention of the shinobi. He wasn't so lucky. Going somewhere, he heard before being picked up by the horrifying creature the blonde boy had become. Please, let me go and you can have anything. Money, women, whatever you want, just let me go. Naruto appeared to ponder it for a moment before saying, okay, I won't kill you, much to the relief of the crime boss. However, that relief turned to dread when he continued, but, I guarantee he will, indicating Zabuza. Hey Zabuza, catch, he called out, throwing Gato over to the waiting man. Swinging his sword, it appeared as though Gato had gotten by unscathed, but when he landed, his upper body separated from his lower body. Zabuza had cleaved Gato clean in half. Upon seeing this, Sakura promptly threw up. Sasuke, who had watched the whole event take place, was absolutely furious. Why didn't he have power like the others had? That fury turned to fear and excitement, however, when Naruto, back in his human state, turned to Sasuke and said, do us all a favor Sasuke, make them extra crispy, before linking arms with Haku and disappearing. Turning to Kakashi, who nodded, Sasuke used his grand fireball jutsu to burn the bodies of Gato and his men. Time skip. The next morning, bowing, Naruto thanked Tazuna and his family for their hospitality before the group set out for Konoha. Naruto himself was surprised at Haku. He had just turned her that morning, and he had expected her to be weak from the process. However, she seemed just as strong as ever as she walked along beside him. Though she was a tad bit paler and seemed to be trying to adjust to her hated senses. As the group continued on, Naruto pulled out a bottle of something and took a swig. He then offered some to Haku. Taking a drink, her eyes widened and she began drinking as if she had been in a desert without anything to drink for days. Naruto, asked Sakura, what exactly is that, though she knew she wouldn't like the answer. You remember that army of thugs? Well, I kept some of them to drain later. That would be their blood, or what's left of it anyway. Upon this announcement, Haku spit out what she had in her mouth and threw the bottle away, only to have it be caught by Naruto. Come now, my dear. You knew that you would have to drink blood sooner or later. And you didn't seem to have a problem with it before you actually knew it was blood. Nor did you have one when I offered you my blood earlier to fully turn you. Suck it up, no pun intended, said Naruto to Haku, who was at that point draining Naruto's water supply to get the taste out of her mouth. Haku looked sheepish for a moment, before schooling her features. Behind her, she could definitely make out Zabuza chuckling at her. After only about noon, the group made it back to Konoha's gates, having ran most of the way after the bottled blood incident. Reporting to the Hokage's tower, Kakashi gave the mission report. Afterwards Naruto gave his support for Haku and Zabuza, and officially put them under his clan's protection. Once everyone else had left, Naruto asked Satobi to officially marry them then and there. So now, after showing Haku and Zabuza the Namikaze estate, he decided to give Haku a tour of the village. However, he had more than leisure time with his new wife on his mind as they entered the Hyuga clan compound. "Halt, state your business here," said one of the guards, Byakugan active. "Yes, Lord Hyuga should be expecting us," replied Naruto in a no-nonsense tone that caused Haku to wonder what was going on. The two were brought into a beautiful Zen garden, where the Hyuga clan head was waiting for them. Walking up to Hiyashi, the two vampires bowed before Naruto and Hiyashi smiled at each other. "Hello Naruto, I see you finally found yourself one of your brides," said the clan head. "Yes, which is actually why I am here, to expand my family a bit further, as I am sure my shadow clone explained," replied Naruto. "Ah, straight to business as usual," said Hiyashi. "Yes, your clone did give me quite a bit to think about concerning my daughters. So, do we have a deal?" asked Naruto, causing Haku to roll her eyes. He sounded like he did yesterday when she accepted his proposal. "Yes, as a matter of fact we do. I have already sent a branch member to bring Hinata's team here as witness, and I have sent my nephew Neji to bring both my daughters here." "Ah, here they are now." Haku turned to see three people walking in. One, a boy who appeared older, had brown hair and the famous Byakugan eye. The second one appeared to be a very timid girl, who poked her fingers together as they walked. She too had the Byakugan eye but had midnight blue hair. The last one was a girl, who appeared to be 7 or 8 years old. Like the others, she had the Byakugan eye and had brown hair. Next, another group walked in. Naruto recognized them as two of the genin rookies, though he couldn't remember their names, just their clans, and their sensei, Kirine Yuhi. As they all gathered, Hiyashi took an official-looking document out and, using blood, which for some reason made Haku feel excited, he signed his name on the paper, after which he applied chakra, making his signature turn black as ink. Afterwards, Naruto did the same and the insignia of the Hyuga and Namikaze clans were stamped on as well. He had Haku sign it also. Finally, Kirine's signatures as well as her team's were collected, though they had no idea what they were witness to. Putting the paper away, Hiyashi looked at the entire group. "An agreement has been made for an alliance between our clans," he said. "To seal the alliance, Lord Namikaze, I present to you my daughter," he continued, earning gasps from everyone aside from Naruto and Haku. "Lord Hyuga, you can't be serious," said Kirine. "You would marry off Hinata to someone she doesn't even know." As she said this, both Naruto and Hiyashi looked at each other before laughing. "What is so amusing about this?" demanded Kirine. "It's simple," said Naruto, "I don't want Hinata as my wife. The deal is that Hanabi be adopted into my clan as our daughter," he finished while wrapping an arm around Haku, once again earning gasps from the others. "You see, no offense to Hinata personally, but she would never be able to handle the vampiric bloodline. She is too gentle, too kind. She wouldn't last in my clan. As for adopting Hanabi, I am not only already married, I am a clan head, giving me clan status, and as a shinobi, I am an adult in the eyes of the village. She herself is still only 8, but I am 16, twice her age, so don't say anything about that. As for the other reasons I have chose Hanabi, is that she has been greater influenced by the Hyuga Council than Hinata, and is exactly what I believe a vampire should be like. Not only that, but with Hanabi gone, Hinata can become clan head without question, and eliminate the caged bird seal you all hate so much. It's pretty much an all-around win for everyone involved, aside from the Hyuga Council." Kirine looked thoughtful for a minute before responding, "That actually makes a lot of sense." "Doesn't it though?" said Naruto. "Pack anything you feel you need," Naruto said to his new daughter, "the two of us will be back in a few hours to escort you to our place," he finished. The two began to walk out, but were stopped by Hinata. "But what about the council? They won't like you having possession of the Byakugan," she said, surprisingly without her stutter, Kirine noticed. My bloodline will take dominance over the Byakugan. She will keep her bloodline, but should she ever have children, it will not pass on to them, replied Naruto as he and Haku left. You really just adopted a child? Questioned Haku, with a skeptical look on her face. I did no such thing, replied Naruto. We have just adopted a child. At this declaration, Haku smirked and said, you try to deny it, but your actions are proving me right. Right about what? Asked Naruto, seeming for the entire world completely oblivious. That you really do have a heart. You care, and we both know it, replied Haku in a sing-song voice, before taking off running. Realizing what she said, everything clicked into place before Naruto began to chase her, shouting, you take that back. Back in the Hokage's office, Sarutobi chuckled at the antics of Naruto and his new spouse. She seemed like she could make him, at least for a while, really get back his humanity. He knew that if she had anything to say about it, she was going to get Naruto back to his old self, bit by bit. Putting away the crystal ball, he replaced it with a small orange book. Take it back, Haku, shouted Naruto. He hated to admit it, but he was actually enjoying himself. Make me, my dear husband, yelled Haku between bouts of laughter. She too hadn't had so much fun in years. No more running from real Hunter Nin, and no traveling from place to place earning a living by killing. Okay, technically she still had to kill to live, or would at some point, but she thought she could handle it. Turning around a corner, she suddenly stopped cold. As Naruto ran up behind her, he too stopped. In front of them were two people. Though they couldn't see their faces, one appeared to be a girl, slightly older than themselves. She had blonde hair tied in 4 pigtails in 4 different directions. The other wore a black suit that made him look like a cat. They could tell by the voice that this one was male. In his hand, he had the Hokage's grandson Konohamaru hoisted into the air. Across the alley stood Sakura with 2 other children, probably Konohamaru's friends. Seeing the cat guy preparing to hit Konohamaru, Naruto in the blink of an eye grabbed cat guy's wrist and twisted it sharply, threatening to break it. Haku quickly came up behind the blonde girl and held her senbon to her neck, though she was trying with all her might to keep from biting and draining the girl. I suggest you put the Hokage's grandson down, unless of course you want to cause a national incident, as you're obviously from Suna from your headbands, and the fact that I've never heard of a puppeteer that wasn't from Suna, he said in a cold voice. Kankuro quickly dropped Konohamaru, shocked that he had been about to strike the grandson of the Hokage, but even more in shock that he had been recognized as a puppeteer. If you're wondering, I can tell this is a puppet because I can't feel, or hear any blood pumping through this piece of junk. Turning to the tree nearby, he continued, you can come down now, I know you're there. Sasuke suddenly jumped down from where he was perched. Not you, said Naruto, still staring at the tree. The group looked up and was shocked to see a red head with a gourd on his back. Using the sand shunshin, he appeared in front of the other 2. They looked like they were ready to shit themselves. Gaara, that kid bumped into me, he had it calm. You're a disgrace to our village, Kankuro. Be quiet or I'll kill you, said the redhead, now named Gaara. Turning to the Konoha residents, Gaara said, my name is Gaara of the desert. These 2 are my team. My brother Kankuro and my sister Temari. I apologize on behalf of my siblings. No harm done. You're here for the Chunin exams, aren't you? My name is Naruto Uzumaki. These are my teammates, Sakura Haruno and Sasuke Uchiha. You are correct, Naruto Uzumaki. We are here to participate in the Chunin exams. You are interesting, I hope to face you in the exams. You can help me prove my existence, he said before he and his siblings turned to walk off. Hey, before you leave, would you all like to grab a bite to eat? My treat, said Naruto. Turning back to the group, Temari and Kankuro looked at Gaara, who said, all right, we can get something to eat. Great, said Naruto, I know this great restaurant not far from here, they have just about anything you can imagine. I'm sure that's an exaggeration, Naruto, said Sakura. Turning to his pink-haired teammate, Naruto replied, they even serve my special drink. I think it's the only place in the village that does. Upon hearing this, both Sakura and Sasuke froze for a moment, not going unnoticed by the Sand siblings. Naruto and Haku took the lead, followed by Gaara. Temari leaned close to Sakura and asked, what's so special about his drink? Sakura looked hesitant for a moment and replied, "He drinks blood. Sometimes he sucks it right out of people." This time, it was Temari who froze. And what was probably worse was she knew how blood excited her brother. "Oh, this is not gonna go well," she said. "Sorry people, I'm ending the chapter here. Just a couple of things I'd like to say. First off, bet you didn't see Hanabi's adoption coming, and as I said at the beginning of the chapter, I don't think it's been done before. Secondly, I'm posting a link directly to my forum page. I currently am managing 2 forums. They are Naruhina, why can't people just give it up? For anyone who just is so sick of this pairing, or realizes that it doesn't work. Chapter 5, Howdy Peoples. Okay, just posting this again, in case some people only read a single story of mine. Before we get started, I just want to say I currently have 7 stories. I would like to make it an even 8, so I have made a poll on my profile with 10 different choices to choose from. If you want a description, you'll have to ask me, cause all I put was the title, crossover type and the pairing. I did this so you would actually vote on my poll. It's irritating listing the options and then having people send their choices in reviews, cause I don't know if you did just that, or that in the poll. Anyway, just vote. Disclaimer. I do not own Naruto or anything this story may happen to cross over into. It's not Ichiraku's, but even I couldn't get old man Ichiraku to get blood on the menu, said Naruto, as the group walked into a grill and bar restaurant. The guy who owns this place used to let me eat for free when I was living on the streets. He butchers his own meat and keeps the blood for me now that I'm vampiric. As if to make his point, an older man at the bar, a former shinobi if anyone could guess by the way he carried himself and the many scars on his body, waved the group over to a table near the bar. "Naruto, my boy, what can I getcha?" "The usual I'm guessing," said the man, a warm smile on his face as the group sat down. "Better make it 2, Naifu, I've made a friend," replied Naruto, wrapping his arm over Haku's shoulder. The man, now named Naifu, smiled and walked to the back room. "What kind of name is Knife?" asked Sakura. His real name is Ryu, but during his time as a shinobi, he had a funny obsession with using trench knives for weapons. And not just that, he always carried one wherever he went, even picked his teeth with them. From what I hear, you can't step into his apartment without stepping on something sharp and pointy. Naifu is just a nickname given by his shinobi friends and it was so stupid and unoriginal it just kinda stuck, replied Naruto, shrugging his shoulders as Naifu came back in with 2 tall glasses of pig blood for the newlywed couple, making Gaara watch with wonder as sand seemed to fly around him oddly. "You forgot to mention my sharp wit and devilishly good looks," chuckled out Ryu. As the group ordered, Temari and Kankuro looked on nervously at their brother. Gaara himself watched in awe as the 2 vampires downed their glasses of blood and ordered 2 more. All through the meal hardly anyone talked aside from Naruto, who seemed to pay no mind to the look of bloodlust in Gaara's eyes as the sand whipped and swirled around the red head. It wasn't until Gaara's curiosity was piqued that he even said one word. "Why exactly do you drink blood?" he asked, his voice taking on a hint of excitement at the mere word. "It's a vampire thing," was his reply from Haku, who went back to drinking her own glass of the pig's blood. Gaara was about to inquire further, interested in these vampires as she called them, when an empty liquor bottle was thrown at the back of Naruto's head, smashing on the back of his skull. The boy could have easily dodged it, having known it was coming, but instead chose to let the man take his shot. After his childhood he was used to such things. Turning around, Naruto noticed a drunken man stumbling his way across the bar toward them, a look of utter hatred adorning his face. All of it aimed at Naruto. As the man got nearer, Naruto stood and turned to face the man, his face never losing its eerie calmness. "Hey demon boy, you've overstayed your welcome here. Why don't you just leave the village and do us all a favor?" slurred the man as he got closer to Naruto. Both Gaara and his siblings raised their eyebrows at the demon remark. "Sir, you're drunk. I suggest you go home before you get hurt," replied Naruto calmly, before turning his back to the man and preparing to get back to his meal. "Don't you ignore me, beast," shouted the man as he pulled out a knife and stabbed it into Naruto's spine. The group saw Naruto wince for a moment before turning around slowly, allowing them to see the knife lodged a good 2 inches in his back. The man looked shaken and backed up against the wall, his confidence beginning to leave him. I gave you the chance to leave, but now you're beginning to try my patience," said Naruto, his voice turning a horribly deep pitch and his entire form seemed to ripple slightly before settling. See, that proves you're a demon. Everyone knows it, you can't hide in that form forever," said the man. Naruto in the blink of an eye had the knife out of his back and threw it at the drunk, stabbing through his hand, pinning it to the wall he was against. "You want a demon, a beast? You've got one," shouted Naruto, as his form began to ripple and grow, becoming the same creature he had become the day before on the bridge, making even Gaara move away slightly. Naruto walked slowly toward the man as he struggled to get free, to no avail. Naruto got close enough to the man and grabbed him, pulling so hard he ripped the man's hand from the wall. He made his way over to the door, man still in hand, and flew out of the restaurant. The rest of the group, even Gaara, quickly ran outside as well, to see that Naruto had flown several thousand feet into the air and continued to fly upward until they couldn't see him or hear the screams from the drunk anymore. They all stood there, staring up into the sky for several minutes, before they could make out the form of the drunk, falling at an incredible rate toward the ground. The man fell, hitting the ground hard enough to shatter every bone in his body. Fortunately, he wasn't alive to feel it, as evidenced by the fact that no blood flowed from his many wounds. Seconds later, Naruto, back in human form, landed next to him, impacting hard enough to form a decent-sized crater. Standing up and dusting off, he looked at the wide-eyed group and just smiled sheepishly. Sorry you all had to see that. Should we get back to our meal?" With that, he simply strolled back into the restaurant as if nothing had happened. Haku, who wasn't nearly as disturbed as everyone else, just followed her husband back into the building as well. They were soon followed by the rest. All three of the Sand siblings creeped out. Gaara noticed that even Shukaku was silent, something he wasn't used to. As they got back to the table, they once more saw Naruto draining glasses of blood. Naruto, I think I'm gonna go," said Sakura, looking almost as pale as the vampiric teen. "Yeah, I think I'll head home too," said Sasuke, really wanting to get away from the blonde. That left Naruto, Haku, and the Sand siblings. Once his teammates left, Naruto suddenly became serious as he turned to Gaara. "Now then, what's a demon container doing here?" he asked, causing the three to freeze. Gaara's sand once more began swirling around him. "Don't be so serious, you're among friends," said Naruto, lifting his shirt, showing them all the seal array that covered his gut. "After all," he said once he had finished, "you didn't think you were the only one in the world, did you?" The siblings suddenly went wide-eyed, even Gaara. The boy had known that there were others like himself, but didn't know he was having lunch with one. "So, which one do you contain?" asked the sand manipulator, though after reading the leaf's history, he already had a pretty good idea. "The 9 tails," Naruto answered. "As for you, based on your manipulation of the sand, and the fact that you come from Suna, leads me to believe you to contain the 1 tail, Ikibi no Shukaku, right?" His response was a slight nod from the boy. "I take it that the officials in charge of the exams have no idea of your condition then," continued Naruto. "Meaning you either didn't want people meddling in your private affairs, or you didn't tell because you've been sent in as a weapon against this village." The sand trio all tensed, but Naruto put his hands up to calm them down, chuckling slightly. "Don't worry, I know all about your invasion. Jiraiya isn't the only one with a spy network. It's amazing what uses you can find for hypnotic powers. I've already told the Hokage, and he's willing to let you off the hook, in exchange for your village's service against the man you're working for, Orochimaru," said Naruto, causing the three to look to each other, having a silent conversation amongst themselves. As they did, Naruto took out a slip of paper and wrote down the location of his home. "If you make your decision, come to my home and talk to me," he said before leaving the money for the restaurant bill and leaving, the three from Sand following shortly afterward. Once more stopping at the Hyuga estate, the 2 vampires met their new daughter at the gates, a few storage scrolls packed with all of her things. "Are you ready?" asked Naruto. When he got a confirmation nod from the girl, he indicated for her to climb onto his back, gaining an incredulous look from Haku as the girl climbed on and Naruto transformed, startling Hanabi to the point that she nearly jumped away from him. "While I have no doubt that flying is a much faster means of getting to the other side of the village," she said, if you hadn't noticed, I don't know how to transform or fly, she finished, crossing her arms over her chest and gave him a look that shouted, you are not leaving me to walk back home. Just focus chakra across your body in whatever way feels most natural to you. Let everything go and your body will do the rest. As for flying, it just comes naturally. It did for me at least. Haku did as she was told, and before Naruto's eyes she began to grow and change. Wings began to sprout from her back and her hair grew longer and more wild. When the transformation was finished, Naruto couldn't deny he liked what he saw. Standing where Haku had been, was a creature of beauty. She stood taller than Haku, though not nearly as tall as himself. She had 3 talons on each foot with another in the back of her foot. Where her knees were now sported a jutting spike from each, her elbows sporting similar spikes. Her wings resembled his own, and she currently had them wrapped around her like some form of cape or cloak. Her hands had become like claws and her skin covering her body was a pale blue color. Her hair now reached down to her butt, but was much more wild than it had been previously. Her pupils became an eerie yellow color, her fangs grew greatly, and her ears became pointed. Letting out a shriek, her wings whipped out to the side, showing an impressive wingspan. Anyone who doesn't know what I'm going for, read the notes at the end of the chapter. Letting out a horrible shriek of his own, Naruto took off with Hanabi, Haku following closely. She noticed that it was much easier than she had originally thought. Hanabi, who wasn't exactly expecting this particular mode of transportation, screamed as they climbed high over the village on their way to Naruto's clan compound. However, she soon lost her fear and began to enjoy the ride, and looking at the village from as high up as they were was an incredible experience for the young girl. As they descended to the ground, Hanabi noticed just how small she was compared to the creature she was holding onto for dear life. It didn't last long however, as both her new father and mother reverted back to their human forms. Upon entering the main house, Naruto had Haku show Hanabi to her new room as he went to check on Zabuza. After all, it was already late in the day, and the full moon would be rising soon. He had to be sure that the control seal worked. The man in question was in excruciating pain as the synthetic lichen venom coursed through his system, the pain growing worse with each minute that the full moon drew closer. More for Naruto and Haku's protection than his own, he was locked in something similar to a prison cell in the basement of the main house. A small opening in the wall near the ceiling allowed light in, and the part of the room as well as the aforementioned opening in the wall were lined with thick metal bars, lined with seals that delivered a horrible electric shock when touched. Naruto had told him to stay in the room until he was sure his own seal, placed on the back of his neck, would work properly. But he never mentioned the pain. Even as he was thinking about it, in walked the boy who had done this to him, watching the time, waiting for the moon to rise. It would be soon, darkness had already fallen, and Zabuza felt like his very body was on fire. He also felt the urge to tear the flesh of the vampire boy, though he managed to barely suppress it. As the light from the full moon shone through the window, it was all he could take. He began tearing at his skin, trying to get rid of the pain. As he was doing so, he began growing to a size similar to Naruto's creature form. As he tore at his flesh, his very skin was tearing off, revealing dark fur underneath. His entire physical structure began to change into a more wolf-like appearance, though he still seemed to have no trouble standing on 2 legs. As the transformation finished, he let a dark howl at the moon, before sniffing the air and, turning, setting his sights on the vampire on the other side of the bars. The new lichen jumped at him, but upon contact was electrified and blown back to the other end of the cell. From where and how he landed, Naruto could make out his seal glowing a bright golden color, causing the vampire to smirk. The seal had activated, just as planned. Now to see if his commands would be obeyed. Zabuza once again lunged at the bars only to be blown back again from the electricity. "Do not do that again," he said. Zabuza went still and growled at him, but it wasn't enough for Naruto. "Don't growl at me either. I'll only have to do this on the full moon when you lose control." At the words, "Don't growl," Zabuza suddenly went quiet. Naruto smirked. Might as well have fun with it, he thought. "Zabuza," he said in a commanding voice. "Bow to me." The great wolf creature that was the demon of the hidden mist got down on all fours and lowered his head in a bow, much to Naruto's delight. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have a winner. Chapter 6. After Naruto had checked to make sure the seal would hold up and work as he planned, He left Zabuza to his own crazed devices and went to see where his new family had gotten to. Walking around the Namikaze house, he eventually found Hanabi and Haku together in the kitchen, both having a bite to eat. "How are you ladies holding up?" asked Naruto, making his presence known. "Fine. We've taken Hanabi's things to her room and unpacked. All that remains is to finalize the adoption into the clan," replied Haku, moving over to her husband. "So, how are we going to do this? Will it be you who turns her, or will you have me do it?" "We will wait a while longer," said Naruto. "When we turn her, I think it only fitting that we both have a hand in it." "What are you both talking about?" asked Hanabi. Naruto sighed, before walking toward Hanabi, bending to her level. "You are going to gain our bloodline. There is nothing to worry about. There will be a brief moment of pain, but the rewards are great," said Naruto. Hanabi looked him in the eyes, before saying with confidence, "I'm ready now." Naruto just smiled, before replying, "I bet you are. However, your mother and I have things to do, so for now, I say make yourself at home," he said. Hanabi merely nodded, before leaving the kitchen. "What is it we have?" Haku was cut off when Naruto grabbed her and pulled her in for a passionate kiss. She was surprised. Naruto hadn't actually kissed her at all until now. The fast wedding wasn't even a wedding. It was just the paperwork part, and no kissing was involved. But as surprised as she was, she found herself pulling him in to make the kiss deeper. After what felt like forever, they finally pulled their lips apart. "Did I show you the bedroom yet?" asked Naruto, getting a shake of the head indicating the negative from his wife. "I'm about to," finished Naruto, before he grabbed her hand and pulled her through the house to his bedroom. They didn't come out all night. The next morning, Haku awoke to find herself lying, sprawled across the bed, Naruto nowhere to be found. She did however find a robe to place around herself, which she made use of before leaving to find him. She entered the kitchen to find a ragged-looking Zabuza eating like there was no tomorrow. "Lord Zabuza, have you seen Naruto by any chance?" she asked, the man looking up and swallowing a very large bite of food before speaking. "Yeah. He came by to let me out of my cell about 30 minutes ago," he said. "Okay, do you know where he is now?" she asked. All she got in response was Zabuza shoveling in more food before pointing outside. She left the house and walked in the direction that her master had been pointing before she wandered into a Zen garden. Inside the garden area, sitting on a large rock, was her husband, sitting in a meditative position, meditating. She was about to leave, but was stopped. "Don't go," he said. "Come sit with me." Haku complied and sat next to the rock. "Why are you out here? I thought that just because you can be in the sun, doesn't mean you like to be," she asked. "I enjoy the sunrise. While the sun may be irritating, the moments just before and just after sunrise are moments of pure peace. Perfect for meditation. For a moment, I can feel a semblance of life from within. You have no idea how peaceful it is to be able to feel deeply in tune with your own chakra," replied Naruto, never leaving his position, or opening his eyes. "That actually brings up a question. If you're dead, how are you producing chakra?" asked Haku. "I used to wonder that myself, but the fox explained it all to me. Chakra is the combination of physical and spiritual energy of a person. The spiritual energy comes from my soul, which is still attached to my body, just as your soul is still attached to your body. The physical energy is produced because while I am technically dead, several functions of my body still operate," said Naruto. "Oh, I guess that makes sense," said Haku. "Now," said Naruto, "let's see if that daughter of ours is awake. If she is, we'll turn her this morning." With that, Naruto got up and helped Haku out of her seated position. "Now," he said again, "to do this right, we both have to drain a bit of her blood, and she has to drink both of ours." Haku nodded as they walked through the large house toward the room Hanabi was staying in, finding the girl awake, writing something down in a journal of some sort. "What have you got there?" asked Naruto, causing Hanabi to quickly hide the journal behind her back. "Nothing," she said. "It's just a diary that sister gave me." "Well, after today, you'll be able to start a whole new chapter," replied Naruto. "We are going to give you our bloodline. Are you ready?" Hanabi just nodded her head. "Good," said Naruto, before at the same time whispering something into Haku's ear, getting a nod from her as well. Naruto and Haku both got down to Hanabi's level. "This will hurt for a minute," said Naruto, moving in and gently piercing her neck, draining a bit of the young girl's blood. It took everything Hanabi had not to yell out in pain. After a short time, Naruto pulled out, and Haku did the same thing on the opposite side of Hanabi's neck. Once she had finished her part, Hanabi dropped to the floor. Her breathing became shallow, and all the color had been drained from her face. Taking out a kunai, Naruto slashed the palm of his hand, offering it to Hanabi, telling her to drink. She did so, but the more she drank, the more furiously she began to drink. Enough, said Naruto, pulling away, his hand healing instantaneously, his form rippling slightly. Now it was Haku's turn. She did exactly as Naruto did, cutting her wrist and offering it to Hanabi, who gladly drank. Once Naruto told Haku that the girl had had enough, Haku pulled away too, her wrist healing just as Naruto's had. Hanabi just lay with a blank expression on her face, before suddenly, she began convulsing. Haku knelt down and stroked the girl's hair. Hanabi began thrashing and screaming, yelling that she was burning. Suddenly, she stopped. Her breathing became extremely shallow, before she sat up. She looked at Naruto and attempted to smile, and Naruto noticed that she now had a nice set of fangs. Naruto picked Hanabi up and set her into her bed, laying her down before pulling out straps that appeared to be from a hospital bed. He hooked them to the bed and strapped Hanabi down. He then turned to Haku. Stay with her. If she needs blood, give her some, but only small amounts at a time, he said before leaving. Haku pulled a chair over to the bed and sat stroking Hanabi's hair once again. More. Haku looked at Hanabi, who looked back and once again said, more. Haku once more took a kunai and cut the palm of her hand, which began bleeding. She offered it to Hanabi, who took it and eagerly began drinking. The more she drank, Haku suddenly began to feel lightheaded. Haku pulled her hand away, Hanabi just sighing at the blood entering her system. What will happen to me? She asked. You're a vampire now. You need blood to survive. But as long as you have it, you're immortal. From what Naruto said, you will age until you reach your peak, around 21, and then you will stay 21 forever, replied Haku. Will I have to kill people for their blood? Asked Hanabi. Maybe at some point, replied Haku. But for now, Naruto has large stores of it frozen in the cellar. You won't have to worry much. Will I be able to fly? Asked Hanabi, in an excited, albeit weak voice. Oh, you like that, did you? Asked Haku. Yes, you will get your chance to fly. Very soon, as a matter of fact. The girls looked to the door to see Naruto carrying several packs of blood that looked like the kind they keep in hospitals. Taking one, he threw it at Haku, who bit into the blood bag and swiftly drained it. Naruto also allowed Hanabi to drain 2 more of the packages, before draining one himself. The last 3 he had carried were kept to give to Hanabi if she felt she needed more. I want you to stay in your room, said Naruto, unstrapping her from her bed. My clone will stay here and give you more blood as needed. But unless I or my clone says otherwise, you are too weak to train today. Hanabi just nodded, before flopping back on her bed, falling asleep instantly. Naruto made a shadow clone, before closing the curtain on each window, causing the room to go dark. Naruto and Haku left the room and exited the house, Zabuza in tow. Where are we going? Asked Haku. Team meeting today. With the Chunin exams coming up, I'm betting Kakashi has the sign-up forms, replied Naruto. Also, while we are out, I'm going to train you in the use of your new abilities, while Zabuza gets used to his new power as well. They continued to walk until they reached the bridge where Team 7 usually met, finding Sakura and Sasuke already there. Well, Kakashi will be another half hour at least, so why don't you and I go start your training, my dear, said Naruto, taking Haku's hand and walking further down the path, into the woods. Zabuza merely followed. First things first, said Naruto. Shift into your other form and we'll have a bit of sparring. With that, his body rippled and morphed into his beast form, Haku's following suit into her slightly more elegant form. If he had to guess, Zabuza would put his money on Haku. Power and brute strength is one thing, but in her form she appeared to be much more agile and capable of quick movements. However, it wasn't long before Zabuza was proven wrong. He had forgotten to take into account Naruto had Haku in experience. She had flown directly at him and attempted a slash with her clawed hands, which he narrowly avoided. Grabbing her arm, He swiftly used her momentum and with a shriek, whipped her into one of the surrounding trees, leaving an impact crater on the tree. This didn't deter Haku, however, as she got back up and took off into the air. She flew up high and dive-bombed Naruto, only for him to sidestep and throw a kick that sent her flying. "Come on," he said, as Haku walked back into the clearing, several cuts and bruises healing rapidly. "I know you can do better than this." Haku's eyes seemed to shine yellow as she shrieked and leapt at Naruto, preparing to throw a punch. He merely held out his hand and caught the punch, before using his free hand to throw one of his own into her face. However, the Haku he punched burst into water, soaking him in the ground. "You're right, I can," shouted Haku, the water on the ground beginning to freeze, freezing the water on him as well, until he was surrounded by a thick layer of ice and unable to move. Haku came up to the statue and performed a swipe with her claws, removing Naruto's arm. She smirked, but it was short-lived as Naruto's chakra suddenly flared, destroying his icy bonds. He held his arm. Well, he said. "You took out my arm." Before Haku's eyes, the blood that was flowing from Naruto's stump where his arm once was, seemed to swirl and form a skeletal arm, the blood literally becoming bone. She watched the muscle in his arm seem to literally crawl down the bone as if it were alive. Then, his skin seemed to do the same, stretching over until his arm looked just like the old one. "Allow me to return the favor," he said, disappearing before reappearing beside Haku. She once more went to punch him, and he once more caught it, grabbing her wrist. He twisted her arm, before slamming his arm down on her elbow, effectively shattering it and making her scream out in pain. She jumped back and held her arm. It was already beginning to put itself back together, regenerating at a rate she didn't believe possible. Whipping her arm out to the side, there was a sickening crack as her bones all realigned and fixed themselves. She smirked before walking calmly up to him. She wasn't nearly as tall as he was in beast form, so she flew up and kissed him dead on, causing Zabuza to look disgusted. When the kiss ended, Naruto said, "I think that's enough sparring for now," before he reverted back to his human form. However, there was more to his decision than the kiss. He could feel Sasuke watching, while also Kakashi had arrived. As Haku became human-looking once more, Naruto took her hand and the two walked, Zabuza following, back to the team meeting spot.